Record.
Hi, my name is Kellogg Patton. That's Kellogg like cornflakes and Patton like the general. And throughout my storied career in the military life, psychosis, and all that good stuff, I wrote this book. Can you see it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote this book called PTSD, Pissed Off to Some Degree. Vent verbally, not violently. It sat on my shelf for about 26 years as a doctoral dissertation written in 1999 for holistic nutrition. And finally, about 6 years ago, this 2000, what are we, 25? About 6 years ago, I figured, let's just make a book out of it because it was written in book form. So I was subsequently diagnosed with two different personalities that I didn't know that I had. And it seems that when we were putting the book together, the personalities came out and said, "Hey, who are you?" And I said, "Who are you?" And all of them looked at me and said, "Where are we?" So let me backtrack and say in 2021, I lived in Chino Valley, Arizona, and I have a beautiful house here that I just gave Shane a tour of. It's kind of like organized chaos and eclectic. Yeah, it's just me expressing myself in who I am. But in 2021, I tripped over my dog in the dark and smashed my forehead on the door jamb. I lost 65 plus years of memory, and when I came to, my first memory was 1959, living in Berkeley, California, and riding my tricycle down a sidewalk and stumbling over the handlebars and smacking my head right here and creating a big goose egg. And the day that I did that, was the wedding day of my mother for her second marriage, which was much better than the first one, marrying my stepfather, David Brown. And she came home from the ceremony, because I wasn't there, and my family met her at the door and said, all they said was, "She's okay," which means Kellogg was not there at the door meeting them. And I was Kelly at the time. And so that was my first concussion at age 5. Anyway, the book explains a lot of my dysfunctional family and everything. And from the concussion in 2021, these personalities appeared in my mind's eye. And the mind's eye, if you don't know what it is when you're really hungry and you pass a Dairy Queen and you know that the blizzards are on sale. The mind's eye is where you visualize that blizzard in your hand instead of still in the machine at the store. So it's a visualization where the brain can say, "Oh, I can see that." And you can use visualization. This is in my book. You can use visualization when you have to go to your mother-in-law's house. And you've heard the same stories over and over again, and it's very stressful for you. But before you go, as you get ready, it's called autogenic training. You visualize all the conversations and all the small talk and all the gossip and all the BS that goes on at family gatherings, so that when you're there, you're not stressed out. And it's not a matter of escaping, it's a matter of dealing with a situation. And now this is my kitten. Get comfortable, okay? Get the butt out of the face, okay? But anyway, the book is a series of essays put together from my military experience and everything. It's out on Amazon, and I published it, a year ago tomorrow. Yeah, a year ago tomorrow. Anyway, there's a Kindle copy, and on the website at Amazon, you just go to books and write PTSD. you're going to get about 6,437 books on PTSD. But you start writing PISS, and boom, Pissed Off to Some Degree is right there, because it's the only one that is true to form representing PTSD. So anyway, and you can read the sample copy, and it gives you the first 10 pages of the book, and it's very interesting because the preface is titled, I can't remember. I've had 7 concussions in 73 years, and I'm a victim of traumatic brain injury. And I can't remember what I just said. But see, and it's not a senior moment. It's a brain trying to remember what she just said, but that's okay. But anyway, in putting the book together, well, the resulting from the concussion, in your mind's eye, after the concussion, 4 days later, these personalities appeared in my mind. And Kelly came in from the right side, and Kellogg came in from the left side, and they had never met. And I didn't know who in the hell they were. And they looked at me, all in the mind, and said, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I don't know, but whoever we are, we're in therapy, so we're going to figure this out." It seems that Kelly developed when she was 5 and being verbally abused by her stepmother, living in Santa Cruz, California. And she grabbed Jesus's hand when she was 5 and said, "You better come with me. We're going to need you in this lifetime." Well, she was being abused by her stepmother. And see, with me, I can explain something, but there's a backstory. So I have to backtrack and go back and explain to you about my stepmother. So right now, I'm going to explain to you about the verbal abuse Kelly endured from her stepmother. Because when my mother divorced my father, she made a flippant remark to Daddy, Ludington Patton, and she said, "You know, the perfect person for you would be my sister, Jean." Just flippant, like this. And nobody thought anything of it until Daddy married Aunt Jean. And my Aunt Jean became my stepmother. Okay? Now, my mother, okay, I got it. And then my mother met a really nice man at a dance in, I think they met in Carmel or somewhere in California. She met this very nice man, and she was dancing with him. And she just looked at him. I think they knew each other about 20 minutes. And she just looked at him and said, "I think you and I need to get married." So here we have my father marrying my mother's sister, and my mom marrying a really, oh God, he was the best man. And he was just, his name was Reverend William David Brown. My sister and I, Ellicott, Ellicott, I don't know who she wants to be called. I called her when I was doing the book, and I said, "Do you want to be called Kit or Ellicott in the book?" And she said, "I don't care." So I put her in parentheses. So my sister is now documented in this book in parentheses. Don't ask me what chapter. I think it's in the chapter on the mechanics of eating behaviors, I think, in here, where I compare taking care of your car to taking care of your body to extend your life and things like that. Because the whole premise is the holistic nutrition, healing with whole foods, reducing your arthritis pain because you're eating foods that irritate arthritis. So it's 436 pages. It's got colored pictures, and it's got big print. Look, It's got big print for those of us who can't see. And my hands shake because I've had a genetic shaking disorder called essential tremors since I was 40. And I remember it because I was a college professor and I was grading papers, and all of a sudden I had no handwriting and I'm left-handed, and all of a sudden I had no handwriting. I mean, it just like disappeared. And then my hands started shaking, and I went to the VA, and I said, "What's causing this?" And the guy gave me a pencil. There's a pen right here. Hand me the pen, Shane, right there. He gave me a pencil and said, "Draw a spiral starting from the inside." So I drew a spiral, and it's still in my medical records. And on one side of the spiral was nice flat lines. And then you got to the middle, like from 7:30 until noon, it's all squiggles. And he said, "Oh, you have essential tremors. Who in your family has essential tremors?" And I went, "Oh, my mom has essential tremors." "Oh, and my Uncle David had essential tremors." "Oh, so it's a mutated gene in your brain." Okay. Now I've had 7 concussions, so my brain is mutated. my partner Charles, we're just best friends. I met him in group therapy at the VA in 2006, and my stronger personality, Kellogg, fell madly in love, drop-dead, gorgeous, unrequited love affair with this cowboy that was full to the nines. I mean, he epitomized everything Kellogg had looked for in a man her whole life. Those abandonment issues that women have when their fathers, they don't have a good father figure. Well, my father was a son of, oh, can I say son of a bitch? Yeah, okay. My father he wasn't a father. He was, the only word I know was pussy whip, but I won't say that. When he married my Aunt Jean, he became not a strong person anymore. That's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? That won't get me in trouble. I didn't even tell the family that I wrote the book. Well, I told my sister, but she didn't put it on the coffee table at Thanksgiving for the family reunion, even though I sent her a free copy. I did not tell my ex-husband that I wrote the book, and I think he's in the chapter 17 under parsley. So if you get the book, and I have a whole section on military protocol and being married as an officer in the Air Force to an officer in the Air Force. Yet, as an officer's wife, I was also, as a captain, I was also an officer's wife. So there are certain hats you have to put on when you go to functions, just like when you go to mother-in-law's house. You put on the hat that says, "Don't dicker," okay? And what happened in the past should stay in the past. Well, you tell my family that, and I'll tell you, 45 years later, my half-brothers, my father had 3 sons from his first marriage. He was 20 years older than my mother. So Daddy was 39 and Mom was 38 and Mom was 18. So Mom was just growing up, but I won't go into that because I'm a product of it, and happy. But the personalities came out, and as I was putting the book together, Kellogg, the stronger personality that joined the Air Force on a bet in 1976 when she graduated from Chico State College with a bachelor's degree in recreation administration. And I'll tell you, I was so trained that if you wanted a tennis court built, I could line up the sun and the time of the day and have it all situated so you don't get the sun in your eyes and all that stuff. And we call it underwater basket weaving and how to blow your nose 101, I think, is the way recreation is in the 70s. And this was at the end in the Vietnam War. So I was at my graduation party with my 3 brothers, Jimmy, Freddie, and Scotty, my mom, my sister, there's a picture of me in the study of the whole family. Could you go find it?
Or we can film it after.
Oh, okay, yeah okay. Anyway, at the graduation party, I always wanted to be a Marine. I mean, my brothers, they were my half brothers, and so they were like 16, 17, 18, and I was a pup, like 5, 6, 7, 10. We would go on family trips out of Olive Ranch in Corning, California, and we'd go to Tule Lake duck hunting, and I'd be in the car with my brothers, and the first song they taught me was the Marine Corps hymn. I could sing the Marine Corps hymn up one side and down the other when I was younger and in my inner child, you might say. And so I always wanted to be a Marine. Freddie was a Marine A4 pilot in Vietnam and Da Nang. Brother Scotty was the equivalent in today's world of a SEAL, but they called it underwater demolition teams. And he was stationed in a submarine off of the Vietnam coast. And Brother Jimmy was in the Army. He was a supply weenie at Fort Ord outside of Santa Cruz in California during the whatever wars were in the, anyway, Korean War, I think Jimmy and Vietnam. It doesn't matter, but anyway, so at the graduation party, I was adamant. I told the guys, I said, I want to be a Marine. And my brother Scotty piped in and he said, Kelly, you can't be a Marine. And I said, why? He said, because you have to join the Air Force. And I was like, what? Like this. And I said, why? He said, because it's the only service not represented in the family. So in 1976, with a bachelor's degree in recreation administration, I applied to every national park in the United States, every national park. And I got responses of, sorry, you're not a vet. Sorry, you're not a vet. Sorry, you're not a vet. And I was like, what the, like this. And so it was the end of the Vietnam War, and the military, the Air Force, would take you. You had to take the ASVAB test. And I'll tell you, with a college degree and I have a photographic memory. Because when I was registering for college after high school, I graduated in 1969 from South High School in Torrance, California. When I was registering for college at West Valley College in San Jose, California, the registrar said, what's your name? And I looked at my mother and I said, Mom, I only knew me as Kelly. What's my name? And she said, Kellogg. And I said, and the registration lady said, what? Like this. And so I learned to spell my name, Kello, double good, Kellogg's. I'm not best to you, and I don't get soggy in milk. And then my last name was Patton. My mother's name was she Brown at the time? I can't remember. Yeah, she was, anyway, I can't remember. And yeah, she was Ursula Brown, married to my stepfather, who was a Unitarian minister. So you see how my life just, if I start telling you about something in 2025, it dates back to the 60s or the 50s and my family dynamics, okay? So my father was just, he basically had no business sense. He started businesses. He was like the black sheep of the family, of the Patton family. And the Pattons date back to, I did a Wikipedia. No, I did a DNA test in 2012. And I found out that, I was on active duty. My name tag would say Patton, Patton. Everybody would say, are you related to the general? Well, I got sick and tired of that, So I'm a very artistic and creative and whimsical pain in most people's ass. But I made up a story about, down a dark alley on a side street in Belfast, Ireland in the 1700s. And I left it at that. Oh, really? I was like, yeah, there was no monogamy in the 1700s in Belfast, Ireland, like this. So, yeah, like this. So I lived with that story. I joined in 1976, and I retired in 1999. So I have 23 years of telling that story until 2012, when I did a DNA test, and then I went to Wicca. It's Wicca Tree. It's Wikipedia, but it's everybody's family tree. That when you get a DNA test, you automatically go on this worldwide family tree. And I found cousins that I didn't know existed. They didn't know I existed. And I met some really wonderful Pattons, and we shared military history and everything like this. And so I asked one of them, I said, are we related to General Patton? And they said, yeah, he's your great uncle. And I was like, what the, really? Like this? And when I heard that revelation, and I researched as a PhD, I research everything. And I have my friend, my partner, Charles, will call me up and say, research this for me. And I was like, go to your tablet and research it yourself. No, that's why you're in my life, is you do my research. And I said, okay. So I researched my family tree and found out that my great-great-grandfather on the Patton side was the governor of Wisconsin in the 1800s. And I was like, really? Like this? And there's all sorts of historical stuff about him, and it's in one of these files that Kellogg organized, and I have no idea where anything is in my house because the amnesia from the concussion in 2021, Kellogg in her protection of Kelly went on steroids and became narcissistic. Anyway, I had a major mental breakdown in 2004 at Nellis Air Force Base. I mean, I was in tears. I didn't know what was happening. I was psychotic. I was a basket case. And I was working as a civil service I was Air Force retiree, but I was working with the Navy at Nellis Air Force Base in some high classified vault as a technical editor for the C-130, the Dirty 30. And the C-130 is my favorite because as a sheet metal mechanic, which I don't remember being, I did a 14-week school for sheet metal, and I aced the course in military tech schools in the 80s or 70s also. You have a test every week in your tech school. And every week of sheet metal school, 14 weeks, divided between Wichita, Kansas, and Naval Base in Millington, Tennessee. I aced every single test. Well, I had a photographic memory, so all I had to do was read something, and then when the test came up, I could visualize it in my mind's eye and answer the question. And in the book, I talk about all of this, being a crew training officer on active duty as a weapons controller, and how they used me to go in and take the test. And then when I came out, I would go through the study guide and mark all the questions and all the answers. And that was good old Alpha Crew at Fort Lee Air Force Station in Hopewell, Virginia. But where was I? I lost. I know about the photographic.
Air Force Station.
Okay. So the photographic memory just works for me. I can remember things I don't want to remember. And with 7 concussions, I had the 7th one in November 2024 when I went to the post office at Chino Valley Post Office on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. And I was coveting, oh, sorry, Kat. I was coveting a box of fruitcake that I had ordered for the holidays. It was my post-presidential election depression comfort food. And anyway, I'm coveting this box on my chest, and I'm walking out, and I saw the handicapped yellow on the pavement, and my car was right there, and I was so thrilled with getting the fruitcake because it's from Collins Street Bakery in Waco, Texas. It's all in the book, and it's a chocolate cherry fudge fruitcake with pecans. I don't like raisins, and I'm allergic to walnuts. So and they were little pecan bites, fruitcake bites. And this is not fruitcake you use as a doorstop or a hockey puck, okay? These are real. It's Collins Street Bakery. And I was coveting this box because we lost the election, and I had to figure out how to deduct my campaign contributions on my taxes legally. So I see the handicap, and I go, okay, and I step down, but there was still an inch of concrete before the pavement. And I fell. And my right leg hit the concrete bunker, and it ripped the skin off of my right calf from my ankle to my knee, just straight down the shin bone, okay? And I've had so many falls and so many stitches. I kind of refer to my left leg as my $300,000 leg because of all the falls and stitches and concussions and all that. Now the right leg was injured, so it's now only worth about $250,000 in this. But my right hand was so used to being injured that it reached down and grabbed the skin that had been peeled off my calf and held it to my shin bone. And everybody came and they wrapped it, and I landed on my left side, left shoulder, and the paramedic, the team captain who was the head honcho, really sweet guy. I mean, they must go to charm school to work with people like me who fall off handicapped sidewalks. That's Kellogg. She fell off a handicapped sidewalk. Well, she also fell in her horse trough. What else has she done? She got kicked out of Brownie. She got kicked out of Weight Watchers. She got kicked out of, you gotta read the book, okay? But anyway, the head guy there said, do you know that the fruitcake saved your life? And everybody who was gathered around, helping and bandaging me and everything said, what? He said, yeah, without that fruitcake on your chest, your 242 pounds would have reverberated off the pavement and you would be dead. And everybody, there was silence. And I went, God damn good fruitcake, isn't it? And I wasn't in pain. It was the shock. I was in shock. And babbling to maintain sanity, but I was already insane anyway, so yeah. When I had my major breakdown in Las Vegas, they diagnosed me with 10 different mental health issues, and they're listed in here. With Kellogg's, with our description of being psychotic and not knowing it for 50-something years. We split when I was 15, and I remember exactly what happened when we split. It was Aunt Jean and Daddy. We had 100 acres. on the Sacramento River in Northern California between the Bend Bridge and the Jellies Ferry Bridge. And Daddy had like a homestead out there. And when my sister and I were 12 years old, we got to choose whether we wanted to live with Daddy and Aunt Jean in Red Bluff, California, on the 100 acres, or in Louisville, Kentucky, with Mom and my stepfather. We called him Daisy. Don't ask me why, but he loved it. He was Reverend William Daisy Brown. He got his first, he was a Unitarian minister, graduated from Stark King School for the Ministry, and went to a school in Portland. And his first assignment was Louisville, Kentucky, at the First Unitarian Church in Louisville, Kentucky. Well, heck, guess what? Mom, Daisy, and I, and our cat, which we lost in a cornfield in Kansas, packed up and moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and lived in a parsonage and everything. And that was the best 4 years of my life. I was happy then. I was psychotic in retrospect. My whole life is in retrospect, because once the book was published, all those voices in my head, those voices in your head that talk to you about where you're going to eat and what you're going to do, and oh my gosh, you didn't turn in that project, and oh my gosh, and all those oh my gosh moments in your normal everyday life. Those voices in your head are running your life. Those are your addictions. I didn't know this, and so one day I asked my therapist, and I said, what do you think about when there are no voices in your head telling you what to do and how to do it and how to react in your life? And she said, I think we better make an appointment for next week. So there's a whole subchapter in here of how I got into therapy and what led up to it, and the inefficiency of the veterans medical community in the 80s. But in putting the book together, Kelly and Kellogg, I learned a lot. I didn't know. I learned more about my childhood putting the book together than I lived experiencing it. I didn't know I had gender identity issues. And when we were putting that chapter together, Kelly and Kellogg in my head said, oh, yes, you did. It's like they were colluding together to educate me on who I was for the last 73 years. And I'm telling you this now because putting it in writing, you read this book and you're like, oh my God, oh shit, Sherlock, is what you're going to say. Because that's what I say. And when I don't remember things, I just go back. I can't read the book. I can't hold the book because I shake, okay? So I have it on disc. It's on Kindle. And right now we're working on an audio. I have a really neat, he's my Apple guy, and his business name is appleguy.com. He worked for IBM. I found him through, how did I find him? Oh, through a referral here in Chino Valley. My computer crashed, and I lost everything. And I went to my usual computer people. Oh, this is Dawn, you lost it. I lost 51 years of my friggin' life when my computer crashed because my internal hard drive was fried and the backup was fried, okay? So I wasn't devastated because it was like I didn't have to commit suicide. The computer did it for me because it wiped out everything. My book, my research, my VA stuff, my Air Force documents, my everything. Because when I came back from Saudi Arabia in 1988, I was sexually harassed and verbally abused, and I put in for a service-connected disability for PTSD, atrial fibrillation, stress-related, all sorts of crap. And the VA came back and said, well, prove to us that you were in Saudi Arabia in 1988. And I said, I'm a Patton. You don't ask a Patton to prove anything. I gave them both barrels. I gave them my, it's a red passport. It's for official business that the military gives you when you deploy. I sent them that. I gave them receipts from all the Persian rugs that I bought while I was there. I sent them pictures. I sent them thank you for being such a nice person and being the recreation officer at the hotel for 4 months, the Yo Mama Hotel in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, during ELF 1 when we were reflagging Kuwaiti tankers. And that's all explained about how I got there. Also, it's also explained how I was volunteered for the Gulf War during Desert Storm and Desert Shield, and what it's like working as an office manager for a Cactus Cash Register company in Tucson, Arizona, and getting a call at work saying, hi, we have a 4-month deployment to Robins Air Force Base in Middle Georgia. And I said, okay, doing what? Well, it's for heavy equipment. They have a museum of aviation, and they're gathering all the heavy equipment operators and construction crews in the Air Force Reserve to go to Robins Air Force Base to build their museum of aviation. And my boss is like, who's calling? Like this. His name was Tony Mastrangelo. He was a big, tough. He crossed the line of when you're cornered in the file room with a very strong boss and you want to knee him in the groin, but you know you can't because you'll lose your job. I was glad to leave Cactus Cash Register. So I deployed to Robins Air Force Base, and we built a museum of aviation there. And I learned more about construction than I didn't know. I was a heavy equipment operator, and it's in the preface in the book. And you're just going to have to go to Amazon and read it because everything is related. I solicited 90 reviews where it's Pubby associated with Amazon, and you pay Pubby and you earn points reading other people's books, and then they in turn read your book and write a review. So I solicited 90 reviews, and just so you get an idea. And it was wonderful because when the reviews came in and Amazon printed them on this website for my book, all the reviews are so positive. And it's interesting because now that the book is out there, my personality is Kelly and Kellogg, and now I'm Quirky, Querky. We're just thrilled because there are no voices in my head because they're all in the book. Everything that's was in my head for 73 years is now out there, so you can read it. And the back of the book, this is the back of the book. There's no explanation of the pictures in the back of the book. So there is one reference to the painting in the upper left corner when I'm talking about PTSD and how it's depicted in abstract art. So I can go through the pictures, but can I keep going? Okay, I can keep going. Oh, good. This is so great because I usually babble, and I've just been wanting to verbally tell the story of my life. And the book is a testament to the Patton fortitude, my integrity, let's just say, if you don't think I'm weird, crazy, and strange, there's something wrong with you. Okay? And my drop dead gorgeous cowboy that Kellogg fell madly in love with in occupational therapy at the Prescott VA in 2006. Our relationship was, in the 22 years since then, has been like Princess Bride, the movie Princess Bride with Buttercup and who was that, Johnny Depp, or I don't know who it was, but it was like unrequited love. And then, yeah, we're like a married couple with no benefits, okay? The only physical contact we have had is when we shook hands to form a business partnership for our equine PTSD snuffle therapy program, when he appeared in my driveway with a horse trailer and unloaded a purebred 28-year-old Arabian gelding and said, "Here, thank you for fencing your 2 acres with 5-foot horse fencing." Kellogg did that. She did all that. I'll explain that. Remind me, Shane, to touch on that.
Okay.
And he had quit his job. He was barn manager at Horses with Heart here in Chino Valley for about 15 years, but he wasn't respected, and he's a 10-year gunny sergeant Marine. I finally got my Marine. It's so wonderful because in the 22 years we've been together, in the beginning, we would trigger each other's PTSD. I grew up with horses, and one of the most wonderful sounds in the whole world, besides a diesel engine idling, is horses eating and snuffling, when they're feed and nickering and all that. That's better than kids playing, okay? I'm allergic to kids. They make me break out in a rash because I wasn't parented. I had no parenting skills. And at one point, we were in Japan, and I needed to get out of the marriage, and I just told my husband I don't want to be married anymore, and I'd like to leave. And he left the room and went and got my son's passport. We were in northern Japan, where the tsunami was in 2004, I think. Yeah, it was Hachinohe and Misawa Air Base, and we were stationed up there. And he came back and he held my son's passport in my face, in my safe space, violating my comfort zone, whatever it's called around yourself that you create, and said, "Possession is 9/10 of the law." And that was it. I was on an EML, emergency family flight home to Tucson, and the divorce was, I had no parenting. I didn't know how to raise. Ian was born. I breastfed him 15 months. I nurtured him and everything. He was nurtured by me and the bohemian. Footloose and fancy free, but still with integrity and everything. Woman that I was and mother that I was, but I had no idea how to raise a child. So I gave Chris primary custodial care, but we had joint custody. And I won't go into the details. It was a very clean divorce. I left Japan and flew to Tucson, and I hired a divorce lawyer. It cost me a batch of my famous chocolate chip cookies and $500. Okay. But he had to spend over a good pretty penny to fly from Japan to Tucson to hire a lawyer to handle the divorce. Okay. So I came out of that fine. And the guilt of not raising my son and everything was was tough because society says, oh, you're supposed to have all these. Yeah, I nurtured. I have nurturing skills. I nurtured. My goat got attacked by coyotes, and they took his head. He's a Norwegian miniature goat. And they took his head in their mouth, and he had bite marks all around his neck. And yet he lived. The other goat was disemboweled and killed by the coyotes. But poor old goat. So I put him in the backyard, and I nursed him back to health. It was a part of me I hadn't seen since my mom called me in 2005 and said, I have Parkinson's. I can't live alone anymore. When can you be here? She was in Prescott. I was retired with mental health issues in Las Vegas civil service. And 14 hours later, my dog and I were in Prescott. And Mom and I had to go to group therapy because she didn't know she was passive aggressive. And she raised me with my stepfather, Daisy, until he passed away in 1963. And that's all in here. 1981 was not a good year for Kellogg Patton. And you'll read about it in here. But 14 hours later, I arrived, and she lived in a very hoity-toity, nice part of Prescott, Arizona, Wildwood, in a very nice house. And I moved in. And she had lived there. My mom married my father, divorced my father, married my stepfather, Daisy. And when he passed away suddenly from, I think was his a pulmonary embolism? No, that was my brother. Anyway, Daisy died in 1965. 1967, because I graduated in 69. Yeah, he died suddenly in 1967, and Mom and I left Louisville and moved to Southern California, and Mom was like Mary Poppins. We went to stay with a family whose wife was dying of cancer, and the husband needed somebody to come in and raise the children. And Mom did a better job raising them than she did raising me. Because in high school, she gave me the birds and the bees lecture and said, if you want to take a boy home, I prefer you come home here. How many people have your mother inviting, your lover to your house? Well, I kindly told her at the time, I said, Mom, you're wrecking all my fun. I want to go find out if you can do it in a Volkswagen up at Lexington Reservoir in San Jose, California. And so, Mom, so when I came here, I moved into her house, and the rule was no flamingos in the house. Because when I moved from Georgia to Las Vegas for the civil service job, come on, there you go, I had 42 flamingos in the front yard. I had a flamingo mailbox on my quarter acre that I owned, on my double wide. And in my house, I had over 300. So flamingos have always been a pacifier for me. They're just, they're just who I am. When you're in a job where you're harassed and your heart goes into atrial fib anytime somebody looks at you sideways. And when I first got my civil service job, as a sheet metal mechanic at Robins Air Force Base in C-130s, you're there the very first day, and you're retired military, and these are civil service guys, and I'm the only female and everything. So this guy sidles into the bench next to me where we're meeting for our morning briefing, and he says, so do you sleep around? And I was like, no. like this. So I guess all the guys decided they were going to prove me wrong, like this. But I just gave them the finger and told them not only no, but hell no. But it was interesting being a sheet metal mechanic on a military base, because I was also a college professor at Georgia Military College, teaching wellness, health and wellness. I was a PE teacher. Health and wellness. I created a fitness walking program. My students were like, "You have to write a paper on a walking class?" I said, "Yeah, you got a book, don't you?" Well, yeah, I gave my students everything that I enjoyed when I was being a professional student. College, when you have 4 college degrees and a PhD, you kind of like going to college when your father pays for one and the GI Bill pays for everything else. Hey, why not get an education, But anyway, I was also teaching nutrition. I created a first aid class, CPR first aid class, because I was a volunteer with the Red Cross during my downtime of unemployment. And I was overeducated and underemployed. And you'll read about it in the book about my homelessness and living in a trailer and living in a realty office across the street from a gym where I was paid $4.15 an hour to be a Nautilus instructor, and how Kellogg squandered Kellogg had a problem with money because Christmas at Daddy and Aunt Jean's, it was lavish. My sister and I at the ranch in Red Bluff,